Michael Jordan hears a girl was mocked for wearing his jersey. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. The sun had barely risen over the small town of Wilmington, North Carolina, when a young Michael Jordan laced up his shoes and stepped onto the court, ready to face the day. Born in 1963, Michael's early life wasn't a picture of luxury and fame that would later become synonymous with his name. His family lived in a modest home, and his parents, James and Dolores Jordan, worked hard to provide for their 5 children. From the beginning, Michael was driven by an internal hunger to succeed, and it was clear to everyone around him that he was different. Growing up in the 1970s, Jordan's love for basketball came early. His father, James Jordan Sr., was a huge influence on him, teaching him the value of hard work and discipline. James wasn't just a father, he was also Michael's first coach, mentoring him in life as much as he did on the court. His father's influence would shape Michael's future, not just as a player, but as a man. His mother, Dolores, provided a sense of stability and nurturing that allowed him to focus on his aspirations. But basketball didn't come easily at first. Michael wasn't an overnight sensation. In fact, during his freshman year at Emslie A. Laney High School, he was cut from the varsity basketball team. The rejection stung, and many of his peers mocked him. But for Michael, the setback only fueled his determination. Instead of walking away in defeat, he hit the gym harder than ever, practicing his shots, his ball handling, and his athleticism. He spent hours improving his game, refusing to let the failure define him. By the following year, he made the varsity team, and from there, his story began to take shape. As Jordan's skills developed, so did his reputation. He quickly became the best player on his high school team, and it was clear that his potential was limitless. Scouts began to take notice, and soon, colleges from across the country were vying for his commitment. But it wasn't just his basketball talent that made Jordan stand out, it was his tenacity, his drive to be the best, and his relentless pursuit of perfection. He wanted to be the greatest, and he was willing to work tirelessly to achieve that goal. By the time he was a senior in high school, Jordan was a national sensation. He was invited to play in prestigious All-Star games, and his highlight reel was filled with jaw-dropping dunks, clutch shots, and unmatched athleticism. Still, Jordan's commitment to his craft remained unwavering. He knew that his journey was far from over, and the next step was to take his talents to college basketball. In 1981, Michael Jordan made the decision to attend the University of North Carolina, a powerhouse in college basketball. Under legendary coach Dean Smith, Jordan quickly found his place on the team. But even in college, Jordan faced challenges. His first year was marked by growing pains as he adjusted to the intense level of competition. But it didn't take long for Jordan to make his mark. In the 1982 NCAA championship game, as a freshman, Jordan hit a game-winning shot against Georgetown, securing the title for UNC. That moment would become a defining milestone in his career, but it was just the beginning. While the shot in 1982 would be remembered as one of his most clutch moments, Jordan's time at UNC wasn't just about individual glory. Dean Smith, who had coached legendary players like James Worthy and Larry Brown, was a disciplinarian who emphasized team play. For the first time, Jordan had to learn how to operate within a system, to trust his teammates, and to contribute to a larger goal beyond his own personal success. It was a lesson that would serve him well when he eventually entered the NBA. Jordan spent 3 years at UNC, leading them to another NCAA championship in 1984. During that time, he honed his skills and matured as a player. But as his college career came to a close, it was clear that he was ready for the next step. In 1984, he declared for the NBA draft, and it wasn't long before his name was at the top of every scouting report. The 1984 NBA draft was one of the most anticipated in history, and Jordan's arrival was seen as a game-changer. The Chicago Bulls, struggling to find an identity in the league, selected Jordan with the 3rd overall pick. It was a pivotal moment for both Jordan and the Bulls. Chicago's basketball landscape was in need of a hero, and Jordan had the potential to be that hero. But while Jordan's arrival in the NBA was filled with anticipation, it wasn't an immediate success story. The Bulls, despite having one of the most talented young players in the league, were still a team in flux. Jordan was thrust into the spotlight immediately, and the pressure to perform was intense. As the season wore on, it became clear that Jordan was not only a prolific scorer, but also a force to be reckoned with on both ends of the floor. He averaged 28.2 points per game as a rookie, a feat that earned him the NBA Rookie of the Year award. Still, individual accomplishments did little to ease the frustration of being on a losing team. Jordan's rookie year with the Bulls ended with a 38-44 record, and they missed the playoffs. This early frustration would serve as the foundation for Jordan's future success. He wasn't just a player who could score, he was a player who demanded more. More from himself, more from his teammates, and more from his coaches. Jordan's drive to win, to be the best, and to never settle for mediocrity became the defining characteristics of his career. He wasn't just playing basketball, he was chasing greatness, and he would stop at nothing to achieve it. The challenges Jordan faced in his early years with the Bulls, however, were not enough to deter him. He became known for his unmatched work ethic, his refusal to accept anything less than the best, and his ability to inspire those around him. In just a few short years, the Bulls were no longer a team struggling to find their identity. They were becoming a team that was beginning to realize its potential, and much of that transformation was thanks to the leadership and undeniable talent of Michael Jordan. By the end of the 1985-86 season, Jordan had proven that he was more than just a scorer, he was a game-changer. But, despite his success, the team still needed more. Jordan knew that winning titles was the ultimate goal, and that's what he set his sights on. But first, the team had to evolve. This would be the next step in Jordan's journey, the journey to greatness. Michael Jordan's early years in the NBA were a testament to his skill, determination, and competitive spirit. By the mid-1980s, it was clear that he was an extraordinary talent, but individual accolades alone weren't enough. For Jordan, the ultimate goal was to win championships, and despite his brilliance, the Chicago Bulls were far from being a title contender. This chapter would prove to be a defining moment in Jordan's career. The transformation from an individual superstar to a leader capable of winning championships was about to begin. Jordan's ascent began in the 1985-86 season. His personal performance had reached extraordinary heights, as he averaged 37.1 points per game, the highest in the league. Despite being on a team that lacked the talent to contend for an NBA championship, Jordan's play was awe-inspiring. His athleticism, his scoring ability, and his flair for the dramatic made him a household name. His individual accomplishments were unmatched, but basketball, as he soon realized, wasn't just about scoring, it was about winning as a team. As much as Jordan excelled on the court, the struggles of the Bulls continued. The team had only one true star, Jordan, while the supporting cast was still finding its identity. The lack of a true second option for Jordan, coupled with an overall lack of depth, meant that the Bulls couldn't break through the Eastern Conference. Even with Jordan's scoring ability, they were still getting bounced from the playoffs early. Jordan had the talent to compete with anyone in the league, but without the right pieces, the championship was still out of reach. The Bulls' lack of success didn't discourage Jordan. It only made him more determined to not only elevate his own game but elevate those around him. He began to focus on team building, recognizing that greatness didn't just come from a single player's brilliance, it came from the collective strength of the team. Jordan's evolving leadership was key in developing the Bulls into a championship-caliber team, but it was also clear that Jordan needed help. Enter Scottie Pippen, who would become Jordan's longtime teammate and co-leader. Pippen's arrival in Chicago in 1987, though initially met with skepticism, would change the course of Jordan's career. While Pippen had raw talent, he lacked the confidence and experience to immediately step into a star role. However, under Jordan's mentorship, Pippen began to flourish. As the season progressed, Jordan's influence over his teammates grew stronger, and the Bulls began to play better as a team. By 1988, the Bulls had made significant strides, finishing with a 50-32 record. Jordan, now fully immersed in his role as the team's leader, was recognized for his all-around contributions to the game, earning the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year award and an All-NBA first-team selection. The 1988-89 season would be Jordan's breakout as a true leader on a championship-caliber team. The Bulls were still not quite ready to win the title, but they were becoming a dangerous team. Jordan's scoring ability was unparalleled, but his leadership was now equally impressive. He was no longer just a player putting up 30 points a night, he was orchestrating the offense, encouraging his teammates, and playing as a complete player. He was becoming a force on both ends of the court, and it was starting to show. The Bulls entered the 1989 playoffs with a great deal of momentum. In the first round, they faced the Cleveland Cavaliers. The series was a battle of wills, with both teams fighting for every inch on the court. It was during this series that Jordan began to etch his name into NBA lore. In Game 5, with the series tied 2-2, Jordan delivered one of the most iconic plays in basketball history, a shot over Craig Ello at the buzzer, known as the shot. The Bulls advanced to the Eastern Conference semifinals, but more importantly, Jordan had shown that when the game was on the line, he was the man you wanted with the ball. As the playoffs continued, Jordan's leadership began to shine through. The Bulls faced the New York Knicks in the next round, and while the Knicks were a tough team with great defensive players, they could not stop the relentless drive of Michael Jordan. His ability to score in a variety of ways, whether it was through his incredible leaping ability, his mid-range game, or his ability to get to the basket, was overwhelming. The Bulls moved on to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would face the Detroit Pistons once again. The Pistons had become the Bulls' nemesis. The Bad Boys, as they were known, were notorious for their physical play and aggressive defense, particularly against Jordan. The series was tough, brutal, and filled with intense moments. The Pistons used their tough, no-holds-barred defense to frustrate Jordan, but this time, Jordan had something different. He was no longer just the individual superstar, he was a player who had learned from his past failures and now had a team around him that could help him win. Despite the physicality and the challenges, the Bulls were able to break through, defeating the Pistons in a decisive 4-2 series victory. For the first time, Michael Jordan had led his team to the NBA Finals. The 1991 Finals, however, would be a completely different challenge. The Chicago Bulls faced the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that had dominated the NBA throughout the 1980s. Led by Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the Lakers were the defending champions and had an impressive roster. But the Bulls were ready. They had grown as a team, and Michael Jordan was now a complete player, capable of leading his team to victory in any situation. Jordan's leadership, combined with the emerging talent of Scottie Pippen, made the Bulls a formidable opponent. Game 1 of the Finals was a statement from the Bulls. They won 108-105, with Jordan contributing 36 points, and it was clear that the Bulls were ready to win. The Lakers, despite their experience and talent, were no match for the Bulls' intensity. Jordan's play in the series was nothing short of spectacular, and his ability to control the game on both ends of the floor was evident. He scored efficiently, played tough defense, and even made key passes to his teammates. The Bulls went on to win the Finals 4-1, and Michael Jordan was named Finals MVP for the first time in his career. The victory in 1991 was not just about one title, it was about the culmination of years of work and dedication. Jordan had taken the lessons from his early failures and used them to build a championship team. He had learned how to lead, how to elevate his teammates, and how to overcome adversity. The win marked the beginning of the Bulls dynasty, and it also cemented Michael Jordan's place as one of the greatest players in NBA history. As the Bulls celebrated their first NBA championship, it was clear that Michael Jordan had reached the pinnacle of basketball. But his journey was far from over. Jordan was just getting started. The next challenge was to defend his title and prove that the Bulls were not a one-hit wonder. For Jordan, winning championships wasn't just about validation, it was about continuing to prove that he was the best player to ever play the game. The quest for greatness had only just begun, and Michael Jordan was determined to show the world that his first championship was only the beginning of his legacy. The Chicago Bulls' first NBA championship in 1991 had signaled the arrival of a new era in the NBA, one in which Michael Jordan was firmly at the center. But as significant as that victory was, it was only the beginning. The journey to becoming a true dynasty, one that would dominate the NBA for the next several years, was filled with new challenges, rivalries, and growth. For Jordan and the Bulls, their success would be tested by the same level of competition that had kept them from reaching the summit for so long. The 1991-92 season was a critical moment in the story of the Bulls' rise. After the breakthrough championship, the pressure was on to prove that their success wasn't just a flash in the pan. The team's confidence was high, but it was also clear that maintaining a championship-level performance would be more difficult than getting there in the first place. With a target on their backs, the Bulls had to find a way to stay hungry, to continue evolving, and to avoid complacency. Jordan's leadership was essential in maintaining the Bulls' focus. The 1991-92 season saw Jordan play some of the best basketball of his career. He averaged 30.1 points per game and was once again named an All-Star, but it wasn't just his individual performance that stood out, it was his growing ability to make others better. Jordan's understanding of the game had deepened. He had learned how to elevate his teammates, particularly Scottie Pippen, whose play continued to develop. Pippen had been a solid contributor during the 1991 finals, but now he was coming into his own as one of the league's premier all-around players. His scoring, defense, and playmaking abilities gave the Bulls a crucial second option and made them much more difficult to defend. The Bulls were no longer solely a one-man team, and this balance helped them dominate the regular season. They finished with a 67-15 record, the best in the league, and headed into the playoffs with a renewed sense of purpose. But even with a loaded roster, the road to another championship would not be easy. The playoffs saw the Bulls face a series of strong opponents, and it quickly became apparent that the team was as focused as ever. In the first round, they swept the Miami Heat 3-0. Despite the sweep, it wasn't just about the results, it was about the mentality the Bulls maintained. Jordan was leading by example, but he was also pushing his teammates to rise to the occasion. His intensity and unrelenting drive were contagious. In the next round, they faced the New York Knicks, who were tough and physical, but again, the Bulls were too much for them. The Knicks pushed the Bulls to the limit, but Jordan's leadership and his growing trust in Pippen's ability to perform in clutch situations helped the Bulls win the series 4-2. The 1992 Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers marked the final test before the NBA Finals. The Cavaliers were no slouches, boasting players like Brad Daugherty and Mark Price. But the series would become known for one defining moment, Jordan's iconic three-point shot over Craig Ello to win Game 5 at the buzzer. The shot, now simply known as The Shot, was an image that would be seared into the memories of basketball fans. It was a moment of pure brilliance, one that reinforced Jordan's status as the most dangerous player on the planet when the game was on the line. The Bulls clinched the series 4-2, and Jordan had once again proven his mettle in high-pressure situations. With the Eastern Conference Finals behind them, the Bulls were ready for the ultimate challenge, the NBA Finals. Their opponents would be the Portland Trail Blazers, who had a talented roster that included the likes of Clyde Drexler, Terry Porter, and Jerome Kersey. The Blazers were the Western Conference champions, and many believed they would provide a formidable challenge for the Bulls. But this was a different Bulls team than the one that had won the title the previous year. They had grown both as a unit and as individuals, and they were ready for whatever Portland threw their way. Game 1 of the 1992 NBA Finals began with a statement. The Bulls dominated the Blazers, winning 122-89. Jordan was exceptional in the game, finishing with 36 points, but it was his playmaking that truly stood out. He wasn't just scoring, he was orchestrating the offense, making sure that his teammates were involved. This was the full evolution of Michael Jordan, the scorer, the leader, and the playmaker. What made the performance even more impressive was Jordan's ability to rise to the occasion when it mattered most. He wasn't just playing basketball, he was making a statement to the world that this Bulls team was for real. The following games would prove to be even more dramatic. In Game 2, the Blazers mounted a strong comeback. They were determined to prove that they could match the Bulls' intensity, but Jordan's presence on the court was overwhelming. The game is best remembered for Jordan's 6 three-pointers in the first half, a feat that shocked everyone, especially since Jordan wasn't known as a long-range shooter at the time. His ability to stretch his game in unexpected ways only added to his mystique as a player. Despite the Blazers' best efforts, the Bulls won the game and took a 2-0 series lead. Portland responded in Game 3, pushing the series to 2-1, but Jordan and the Bulls were too much for them to handle. The Blazers tried to contain Jordan, but he was unstoppable, and Pippen's contributions made the task that much harder. The Bulls would go on to win the series 4-2, with Jordan being named Finals MVP for the second consecutive year. His performance in the series was nothing short of legendary. He averaged 35.8 points per game, 6.5 rebounds, and 6 assists, while his defense was just as fierce. The victory not only secured the Bulls' second championship but also solidified Jordan's place as the greatest player in the game. The 1992 Finals marked a key turning point in Jordan's career, not only because of the championship but because of what it represented. The 1991 victory had proven that Jordan could lead a team to a title, but the 1992 victory showed that the Bulls were not a one-hit wonder. They were a dynasty in the making, and with Jordan leading the way, they were poised to continue their dominance for years to come. But it wasn't just the championships that defined Jordan's greatness during this time, it was his ability to make his teammates better, to elevate the entire team's play when it mattered most. He had learned how to trust his teammates, how to share the spotlight, and how to lead by example. Jordan had become more than just an exceptional scorer, he had become a true leader, someone capable of lifting a team to new heights. As the 1992-93 season approached, the Bulls were poised for another run at the championship. Jordan's hunger for success had only grown stronger, and his leadership was the glue that held the team together. The Bulls had already proven themselves to be a dominant force in the NBA, but the challenges of defending their title would be just as demanding as winning it. Jordan, however, was ready for whatever came next. With his fierce competitiveness and determination, he had laid the foundation for a dynasty, and the rest of the league knew that the Bulls were a force that would be hard to stop. The 1992-93 NBA season wasn't just another opportunity for Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls to defend their championship, it was a statement. The Bulls, coming off 2 consecutive titles, were now firmly at the top of the NBA. Yet, the journey to cementing their legacy as one of the greatest dynasties in basketball history would be a different kind of challenge. This season would test not just their physical ability, but their mental and emotional resilience as well. For Jordan, the pressure was immense. He wasn't just the league's best player, he was the focal point of the entire NBA. Every opponent the Bulls faced would be coming for them, wanting to prove that the Bulls' dominance could be dethroned. But Michael Jordan didn't back down from pressure. If anything, he thrived under it. His drive to remain the best, his desire to prove he could win no matter the circumstances, was something that defined his career and set him apart from every other player in the league. Throughout the 1992-93 season, Jordan played with a fire that reflected his unyielding desire for perfection. He still averaged over 30 points per game, continued to be a dominant force on defense, and proved that his versatility was second to none. But this season was different in subtle ways. For the first time, it seemed like the weight of his success began to take its toll. The constant scrutiny, the pressures of being Michael Jordan, and the mental strain of trying to lead the Bulls to a third straight title started to affect him. Off the court, Jordan had to deal with the mounting pressure of being the face of the NBA. He had taken on more endorsements and business ventures than ever before, and his image was being shaped not just by his on-court performance, but by how the world saw him outside of basketball. He was no longer just an athlete, he had become a global icon, a figure whose name was synonymous with excellence. While this brought him immense fame and wealth, it also brought a sense of isolation and exhaustion. Jordan, who had always thrived on competition, found himself increasingly drained by the constant demands of the public and the media. The toll of this pressure was compounded by the tragic loss of his father, James Jordan Sr., in the summer of 1993. James Jordan had been Michael's biggest supporter, the person who had always believed in his son's potential. His death was a devastating blow to Michael, and it would mark the beginning of a new chapter in Jordan's life. In the aftermath of his father's death, Michael made the surprising decision to retire from basketball at the age of 30. This decision sent shockwaves through the sports world. Many believed it was a knee-jerk reaction to his grief, while others speculated that Jordan's decision was also influenced by the toll the game had taken on him mentally and emotionally. Despite the unexpected nature of Jordan's departure, it was clear that the weight of his father's death, combined with the pressures of being the best player in the world, had led him to step away from the game. He left behind a Bulls team that was on the cusp of creating a true dynasty, but Jordan's absence created a vacuum that would be difficult to fill. While his teammates, especially Scottie Pippen, were talented and capable, there was no denying that Jordan was the heart and soul of the team. During his time away from the NBA, Jordan pursued a career in baseball, a sport his father had loved and had always dreamed of him playing. His decision to try his hand at baseball, despite having no formal experience in the sport beyond his childhood years, shocked everyone. Jordan signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and was assigned to their Double-A affiliate, the Birmingham Barons. His time in baseball was a struggle. Jordan batted just .202 with 3 home runs and 51 RBIs in his first season. While his athleticism was evident, it became clear that baseball was a much more difficult challenge than Jordan had anticipated. Despite the struggles, Jordan's time away from basketball wasn't entirely wasted. He learned valuable life lessons that would shape his eventual return to the NBA. He discovered the importance of patience, resilience, and the ability to deal with failure. Baseball, unlike basketball, didn't allow for the same instant gratification that Jordan had grown accustomed to in his basketball career. Every game wasn't guaranteed to be filled with success, and the challenges he faced in baseball helped him grow as an individual. Still, the pull of basketball was too strong for Jordan to ignore. He had spent almost 2 years away from the game, and the competitive fire that burned inside him never fully went out. In 1995, Jordan made his long-awaited return to the NBA. He rejoined the Bulls with a simple message, "I'm back." But while his return was met with excitement, it also came with skepticism. Many wondered whether Jordan, after being away from the game for so long, could still perform at the level he had once reached. His physical conditioning, his shooting touch, and his overall fitness were all in question. Jordan's first few games back were a reminder that he was still Michael Jordan. He struggled to regain his former dominance at first, and the Bulls were still adjusting to having their star player back. But with every game, Jordan began to show signs of the greatness that had made him a legend. He gradually regained his rhythm and helped guide the Bulls back to the top of the Eastern Conference. By the end of the 1995-96 season, Jordan had found his stride, and the Bulls, with their superstar back in full force, had become the most dominant team in the league. The 1995-96 season would prove to be Jordan's finest. Not only did he reclaim his place as the league's best player, but he also helped turn the Bulls into the most well-rounded team in the NBA. His partnership with Scottie Pippen was now stronger than ever, and the supporting cast, comprised of players like Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, and Ron Harper, gave the Bulls the depth they needed to compete at the highest level. Jordan's performance in the 1996 NBA Finals, where the Bulls defeated the Seattle Supersonics 4-2, was a statement to the world. He was back, and he was better than ever. He averaged 27.3 points per game in the finals and won his 4th NBA Finals MVP award. The championship marked the 3rd in a row for the Bulls, solidifying their dynasty and establishing Jordan's legacy as the greatest player of his era. The 1995-96 championship wasn't just about the win, it was about the journey back to the top. Jordan had been through the emotional struggle of losing his father, the uncertainty of stepping away from the game, and the difficulty of returning to a sport after a long absence. But he had persevered, and in doing so, had proved that his greatness was not just about his physical ability, but his resilience, his mental toughness, and his unwavering commitment to excellence. As the Bulls celebrated their 3rd consecutive championship, Jordan's return to the NBA marked the start of a new chapter in his career, a chapter filled with even more challenges, but also with the promise of further greatness. The road to becoming the greatest player of all time had been a long and winding one, but with every challenge Jordan faced, he only grew stronger. The dynasty was firmly in place, and the journey was far from over. Michael Jordan was not just back, he was ready to write the next chapter of his legendary career. The 1997-98 NBA season was destined to be the last ride for the Chicago Bulls' legendary roster, and for Michael Jordan, it would prove to be a defining moment in his career. After 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and countless accolades, the pressure to win another title loomed large. The backdrop of the season was laced with uncertainty. Phil Jackson, the mastermind behind the Bulls' success, was in the final year of his contract, and general manager Jerry Krause had made it clear that the team would be dismantled no matter the outcome of the season. Jordan, who had already contemplated retirement once, was now facing the realization that this was his last chance to claim another title with the Bulls. As the season began, it was clear that Jordan was no longer the fresh, young player who had first stormed onto the NBA scene. At 35 years old, he had endured years of physical wear and tear, and the mental and emotional toll of leading the Bulls to multiple championships was apparent. Yet, despite his age, Jordan's competitive fire burned as intensely as ever. He wanted to finish his career with a bang, to end this era on top. And, as always, he was determined to prove that even with everything stacked against him, he could rise to the occasion. For the Bulls, this season wasn't just about a potential championship, it was about maintaining their legacy. Every game, every series, and every moment carried weight. Jordan, Pippen, and the rest of the Bulls were aware that they were playing not just for themselves but for history. With the team's future uncertain, the notion that the 1998 season might be their last together hung over them. Yet despite the pressure, the Bulls didn't buckle. Instead, they embraced it. On the court, Jordan was still as dominant as ever. His scoring ability remained unparalleled, and his defense was still a hallmark of his game. But what set Jordan apart during this season was his leadership. He had already proven time and time again that he could carry a team, but this season was different. He knew that he couldn't do it alone, and with a core group of players who had been with him through the years, including Scottie Pippen, Steve Kerr, Tony Kukoc, and Ron Harper, Jordan was more than just a scorer. He was a mentor, a coach on the floor, and the emotional leader of the team. His ability to inspire and push his teammates was evident throughout the regular season and into the playoffs. Despite the turmoil surrounding the team's future, the Bulls finished the regular season with an impressive 62-20 record, the best in the league. They entered the playoffs with a sense of urgency. This was their last chance to win it all together, and Jordan knew that time was running out. But while the team had found a new level of unity and focus, they faced formidable competition. The first challenge came in the form of the New Jersey Nets, who were swept aside in the first round by the Bulls. The series was a quick one, with the Bulls asserting their dominance early. Jordan and Pippen led the way, and while the games were competitive, the outcome was never in doubt. But as they advanced to the Eastern Conference semifinals, the intensity of the competition increased. The Bulls now faced the Charlotte Hornets, a team led by a strong mix of talent and experience. The series was tougher than the first, but the Bulls were still in control. With Jordan's leadership, they closed out the Hornets in 5 games, securing their place in the Eastern Conference Finals. The road to the finals was now within reach, but standing in their way was the Indiana Pacers, a team led by the sharpshooting Reggie Miller. The Pacers had been a rising force in the East, and many believed they had the talent to knock off the Bulls. The series would prove to be an intense back-and-forth battle, with both teams refusing to give an inch. It quickly became clear that this would be a series for the ages. Jordan's leadership was tested throughout the series, particularly when the Pacers managed to force a Game 7. The Pacers had pushed the Bulls to their limits, and for the first time in years, it seemed like the dynasty was vulnerable. But Jordan was not one to be defeated easily. In Game 7, with the series on the line, he put up 28 points, and despite the Pacers' grit, the Bulls were able to close out the series 88-83. The victory secured the Bulls' place in the NBA Finals, and for Jordan, it was another reminder that no matter how tough the challenge, he could always rise to the occasion. The 1998 NBA Finals would pit the Bulls against the Utah Jazz, a team led by the league's MVP, Karl Malone, and the ever-reliable John Stockton. The Jazz had made it to the finals the previous year but had fallen short against the Bulls, and now they were back, determined to take down the reigning champions. For the Bulls, the 1998 finals represented not just another championship but the culmination of an era. This would be Michael Jordan's last stand with the Bulls, and he knew it. The series began with the Jazz coming out strong, taking an early lead and pushing the Bulls to their limits. But as the games wore on, it became clear that Jordan was not going to let his team lose. In Game 1, the Bulls edged out an 84-82 victory, with Jordan contributing 31 points. But it was Game 2 that would set the tone for the series. In one of the most iconic moments of his career, Jordan hit a jumper with 5.2 seconds left in the game to give the Bulls an 87-86 lead, a shot that would come to be known as the last shot. The Bulls went on to win the game, and it seemed as though Jordan's fate had been sealed. He was going to retire as the champion once again. But the Jazz were not ready to roll over. They fought hard, pushing the Bulls to a Game 6, with both teams giving everything they had. The stakes could not have been higher. For Jordan, it was more than just the final game of the series, it was the final game of his career with the Bulls. With his health declining and the weight of the season taking its toll, Jordan once again proved that when it mattered most, he was the player you wanted on your team. He led the Bulls to an 87-86 victory, securing their 6th championship in 8 years, and was named Finals MVP for the 6th time in his career. As the final buzzer sounded, the Chicago Bulls had done it again. Jordan had led them to their 6th NBA title, a fitting conclusion to an era that had seen the Bulls become the greatest dynasty in NBA history. The celebration was bittersweet. While the victory was a testament to the greatness of Michael Jordan and the entire team, it was clear that this was the end of an era. Jordan had accomplished everything he set out to do, and this victory was the perfect ending to one of the most storied careers in basketball history. In the locker room after the game, Jordan's emotions were mixed. He had just completed his final season with the Bulls, and though he had secured another championship, there was a sense of finality to it all. The dynasty was over, but the legacy was forever. Jordan, who had been the driving force behind the Bulls' success, had brought the team to the top one last time. His leadership, his unmatched talent, and his drive for greatness had defined the Chicago Bulls dynasty, and now, as he walked off the court for the last time as a Bull, the world knew that basketball would never be the same again. As Michael Jordan left the court for the last time, the basketball world stood in awe. The greatest player to ever play the game had completed his final run, and the legacy he left behind would endure for generations. Michael Jordan's decision to retire in 1999, after leading the Chicago Bulls to their 6th NBA title in 8 years, shocked the sports world. At the pinnacle of his career, with everything he had accomplished, he chose to step away from the game. For Jordan, this decision was not just about physical exhaustion, though that was a factor. It was about his desire to leave the game on top, at the very moment when he could walk away with his legacy intact. The 1998 championship, his final title with the Bulls, was the perfect ending to a chapter that had redefined basketball. But as time passed, it became clear that Jordan's hunger to compete was far from satisfied. In the immediate aftermath of his retirement, Jordan embraced a new role as a global ambassador for the game, using his influence to grow the NBA and his brand around the world. His business ventures, including his partnership with Nike and his ownership stake in the Charlotte Hornets, would solidify his place as one of the most influential athletes in history. Yet, the absence of basketball in his life left a void. He had spent so many years relentlessly pursuing greatness, focusing every ounce of energy into his craft. The competitive fire that had driven him for so long didn't just disappear, it simmered beneath the surface. During his brief retirement, Jordan kept himself busy with various projects, but it was clear that basketball was never far from his mind. At the age of 38, after nearly 3 years away from the NBA, Jordan made the decision to return to basketball. His comeback would not be with the Bulls, his home team, but with the Washington Wizards, a team that had struggled in the Eastern Conference for years. The move was met with mixed reactions. Many questioned whether Jordan could return to the level of dominance that he had shown in his prime. After all, he was no longer the young, explosive player he once was, and the NBA had changed during his absence. The game had evolved, and it was filled with new stars like Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and Shaquille O'Neal. Jordan, however, was not deterred by the doubts surrounding his return. He was a man driven by a need to prove himself, to show the world that his greatness didn't fade with age. His first season with the Wizards in 2001 was nothing short of remarkable. While his athleticism had diminished, Jordan's basketball IQ and leadership remained exceptional. He averaged 22.9 points per game in his first season back, and his mere presence on the court was enough to elevate the performance of his teammates. His ability to mentor young players, especially the emerging talent of Gilbert Arenas, was evident. Jordan was no longer the player who could carry a team on his shoulders alone, but he was still the player who could make everyone around him better. Even though the Wizards were not contenders for the championship, Jordan's return brought excitement back to the NBA. The league had been missing its most iconic figure, and his reappearance sparked renewed interest in the sport. Games that featured the Wizards became must-watch events, not just for the chance to see Jordan play but for the nostalgia that his presence evoked. Jordan's return was not just about personal redemption, it was about reaffirming that he was still the greatest player the game had ever seen. But as the season wore on, it became clear that Jordan's second act would not be without its challenges. The Wizards were a team in transition, and while Jordan's leadership and experience were invaluable, they still needed more to become a true contender. In his second season with the Wizards, Jordan continued to play at a high level, averaging 20 points per game. But the team was still struggling to put the pieces together. Injuries began to take their toll on him as well. He was not immune to the physical decline that comes with age, and the wear and tear of nearly 15 years of basketball had left its mark. Despite these setbacks, Jordan's competitive spirit remained as sharp as ever. His work ethic was legendary, and his determination to succeed never wavered. However, it was becoming increasingly clear that his second stint in the NBA would not be the triumphant return many had hoped for. By the end of the 2002-2003 season, Jordan's body had begun to betray him. The wear and tear of the years had finally caught up with him. The Wizards had made progress, but they were nowhere near championship contention, and Jordan had come to terms with the reality that it was time to step away from the game once again. In April 2003, Michael Jordan officially announced that he would retire for the second, and likely final, time. His departure from the game, though quieter than his first retirement, marked the end of an era. Jordan had done everything possible to prove that he was still the best, but now it was time for the next generation of stars to take the spotlight. Even though his second stint with the Wizards didn't result in another championship, his legacy had already been sealed. His impact on the game of basketball was undeniable, and his influence would continue to shape the sport for years to come. Jordan's second retirement marked the end of his playing career, but it didn't mark the end of his connection to the game. He had already begun to transition into other roles, including his ownership stake in the Charlotte Hornets. In many ways, his work as an owner would be a continuation of his leadership, though now from a different perspective. Jordan's understanding of the game, his keen eye for talent, and his drive for success would serve him well as he tried to build a team capable of competing at the highest level once again. While Jordan's time on the court was over, his legacy lived on through his involvement with the NBA. His influence on the league, its players, and the game itself would be felt for generations. Players like Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, and others had grown up watching Jordan dominate, and they had modeled their games after his. His competitive fire, his drive to win, and his ability to perform in clutch moments became the standard by which all players were measured. Jordan's impact on the business side of the NBA was just as profound. His partnership with Nike, which had created the Air Jordan brand, revolutionized the world of sports marketing. The Air Jordan line became one of the most successful and iconic sneaker brands in history, and it helped solidify Jordan's place not just as a basketball player but as a cultural icon. His influence on fashion, sports marketing, and pop culture was immense, and his brand became synonymous with success. Looking back on Michael Jordan's career, it's clear that his impact transcended basketball. He changed the way the world viewed athletes and what it meant to be the best. His journey was one of continuous growth, from a high school kid who was once cut from the team to a global icon who redefined the sport. His ability to overcome obstacles, rise above challenges, and push the boundaries of what was possible made him more than just a basketball player. He became a symbol of greatness. As the years passed, Jordan's legacy continued to grow. He had inspired countless athletes, and his name became synonymous with success, excellence, and winning. Whether it was his 6 championships, his 5 MVP awards, or his countless clutch moments on the court, Michael Jordan had earned his place as the greatest basketball player of all time. His story was no longer just one of basketball, it was a story of ambition, perseverance, and the pursuit of greatness. And though he had retired from the game, his legacy would live on forever, continuing to inspire future generations to chase their dreams and push themselves to be the best they could be. Michael Jordan's career had been defined by his victories, championships, and overall dominance of the basketball court. However, as he entered the 1990s, his life began to shift in ways that no one could have anticipated. The immense success that came with being the best player in the world had always been matched by the pressures, both personal and public, that accompanied such a status. This period in Jordan's life would prove to be one of his most trying, but it would also shape him in ways that had a lasting impact on both his career and legacy. The 1992-93 season, which ultimately marked the first true crossroads in Jordan's career, would become the turning point for him. Despite the triumphs he had experienced on the court, there was a growing sense of internal conflict and pressure that began to affect him. Jordan's life was more than just basketball. It had become a circus. His every move was watched, his every word analyzed, and his every action scrutinized. Off the court, Jordan had entered into a new phase of his career, one that extended far beyond basketball. He had signed lucrative endorsement deals with major companies like Nike, McDonald's, and Gatorade. His face was everywhere. His image had transcended the sport. His Air Jordan sneakers became a global phenomenon, with sales soaring and kids across the world wanting to emulate his style. Jordan's name was not just associated with greatness on the court, it became synonymous with success, style, and influence. But despite this newfound fame and fortune, Jordan was beginning to feel the weight of his success. His life, once filled with simple pleasures and the raw competition of basketball, had become overwhelmed by public perception. Everywhere he went, he was met by fans, journalists, and businesspeople wanting a piece of him. It wasn't just the spotlight that began to wear him down, it was the expectations that accompanied it. Everyone wanted a piece of Jordan, and his time, his focus, and his energy were being pulled in countless directions. By the 1992-93 season, this pressure was taking a toll on him mentally and emotionally. Off the court, Jordan was constantly dealing with distractions, and on the court, the stress started to manifest in unexpected ways. He continued to play at a high level, of course, his scoring, leadership, and on-court presence remained unmatched, but the grind of maintaining that level of excellence season after season, while simultaneously trying to juggle the demands of fame, began to chip away at him. The joy that he had once felt for the game, the pure love of competition, had started to fade beneath the weight of the spotlight. In the midst of all of this, tragedy struck. In July 1993, Michael Jordan's father, James Jordan Sr., was tragically murdered during a robbery while on a road trip in North Carolina. The loss of his father hit Michael Jordan like a thunderclap. His father had been his biggest supporter, his mentor, and his confidant. James Jordan had been a steadying influence in Michael's life, someone who had always been there to guide him through the highs and lows of his career. The emotional toll of his father's death was immediate and overwhelming. Jordan's grief was palpable. He struggled to make sense of his life without his father by his side. His connection to the game had been rooted in his father's support and encouragement, and with James gone, Jordan was faced with an existential crisis. He had achieved everything he had set out to do on the basketball court, but his personal life was now in shambles. In the wake of the tragedy, Jordan made the shocking decision to step away from basketball. He announced his retirement from the NBA in October 1993, at the age of 30. For many fans, the decision was incomprehensible. Jordan was at the height of his career, and he was walking away from the game he loved. But for Michael, it was the only choice. He needed time to grieve, to heal, and to reflect on what truly mattered in his life. In many ways, his retirement marked the end of an era for both the Chicago Bulls and the NBA itself. Jordan's retirement also left the Bulls with a gaping hole in their roster. The team had just come off of 3 consecutive championships, and they were poised to continue their dominance. But without their leader, the Bulls were vulnerable. Scottie Pippen was a great player in his own right, but without Jordan, the team lacked the undeniable presence that had made them so dangerous. The rest of the team was left to pick up the pieces as best as they could, but it was clear that Jordan's absence was going to be felt. But instead of fading into obscurity during his break from basketball, Jordan chose to pursue a new challenge. The sport of baseball had always fascinated him, and it was something his father had enjoyed watching. In the aftermath of his father's death, Jordan decided to give baseball a shot, believing it would provide him with an outlet for his grief. He signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and joined their Double-A affiliate, the Birmingham Barons. The decision to switch to baseball was met with skepticism from almost everyone, including some of his biggest fans, but Jordan was determined to prove to himself that he could succeed in another sport. The year spent in baseball was one of frustration for Jordan. He had the physical tools to excel, but the game of baseball was much more complex than he had imagined. His batting average was a modest .202, and he hit just 3 home runs in 127 games. While Jordan's athleticism was clear, the time he spent away from basketball revealed just how difficult it was to succeed in a sport where failure was inevitable. His time with the Barons was filled with ups and downs, but it also helped him find a renewed sense of clarity. Jordan began to understand the true meaning of failure and perseverance. His struggles in baseball gave him the perspective he needed to return to basketball with a more grounded outlook. Yet, even as Jordan struggled in baseball, the competitive fire never faded. He realized that his heart was still in basketball, and no matter what he accomplished in baseball, it would never give him the same joy. By March 1995, Jordan made his highly anticipated return to the NBA with the Chicago Bulls. In a simple 2-word statement, "I'm back," he announced to the world that he was ready to reclaim his place at the top of the basketball world. His return was met with jubilation, but also skepticism. Could the greatest player to ever live truly pick up where he left off? As it turned out, Jordan's return was a success beyond anyone's expectations. He picked up his scoring touch quickly, and his leadership returned immediately. Though the Bulls were not yet championship contenders without the chemistry and depth they had before, Jordan's presence was undeniable. He led the team with his usual intensity and dedication, helping the Bulls reach the Eastern Conference semifinals that season. The spark was back. The fire was reignited. But this time, Jordan was not just a basketball player trying to reclaim his crown. He was a man who had faced personal tragedy and emerged stronger. The 1995-96 season saw the Bulls return to their championship form. Jordan, fully re-energized and more focused than ever, led the team to a 72-10 record, the best in NBA history at the time. It wasn't just about scoring anymore. Jordan had become a complete player, involving his teammates, playing elite defense, and leading the team in every aspect. His connection with Scottie Pippen had never been stronger, and with key additions like Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, and Ron Harper, the Bulls were ready for a new run at the title. In the NBA Finals, the Bulls would go on to face the Seattle Supersonics. The series was hard-fought, but Jordan's all-around play and leadership saw the Bulls claim their 4th championship. Jordan's Finals MVP award, his 6th in total, was a fitting reminder of his greatness. His return, after everything he had been through, was complete. But more than that, it marked the beginning of another dynasty, as Jordan showed the world that no matter what had happened in his personal life or his time away from the game, he would always be the best. Michael Jordan's second retirement came a few years later, but his legacy was already cemented. What had started as a period of personal and professional struggle had turned into a remarkable resurgence, proving once again that Jordan's greatness was about more than just basketball. It was about resilience, perseverance, and the unrelenting will to win. Michael Jordan's second retirement in 1999 came after a career that had already rewritten the history books. 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, and an endless list of accolades had defined his place in the pantheon of basketball greats. Yet, as he walked away from the game for what many believed was the final time, Jordan was leaving more than just basketball behind. He was leaving a legacy, a blueprint for what it meant to be great in a sport and in life. After his last game with the Chicago Bulls in 1998, where he clinched his 6th NBA title with his iconic shot against the Utah Jazz, it felt like the perfect end to a career that had dominated the basketball world for over a decade. Jordan had carried the Bulls through the 1990s, cementing their place as a dynasty and shaping the NBA into the global spectacle it became during his reign. His decision to retire was made with the understanding that he had achieved everything he had set out to accomplish. His 6th championship with the Bulls, his 5th MVP, and his unmatched influence on the sport left nothing more for Jordan to prove. But even after his retirement, the basketball world couldn't move on from Jordan. His shadow loomed large over the league. For the players who came after him, especially the likes of Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, Jordan represented not only the pinnacle of basketball achievement but also the relentless drive to be the best. While he had walked away from the game, his legacy continued to shape the sport and push future generations to reach greater heights. Jordan's impact extended beyond the court. His business ventures, particularly his endorsement deals with Nike and the creation of the Air Jordan sneaker line, revolutionized sports marketing. His ability to turn a brand into a global phenomenon set the stage for athletes to leverage their on-court success into business empires. Jordan's name became synonymous with success, and his brand, both on and off the court, has remained iconic to this day. For Jordan, the competitive fire that had defined his career never fully extinguished. In 2001, at the age of 38, Jordan made a stunning return to the NBA. This time, it was not with the Chicago Bulls, but with the Washington Wizards. Many questioned whether the greatest player to ever live could still perform at a high level after a 3-year absence. Jordan, however, had always thrived on challenges, and his return was driven not by a desire to prove anything to the world, but to prove something to himself. Jordan's first season with the Wizards was a testament to his greatness. While his body had undoubtedly aged, his basketball IQ, leadership, and ability to influence a game were still extraordinary. He averaged 22.9 points per game, and his presence alone made the Wizards a more competitive team. He brought leadership and mentorship to the young players, particularly Gilbert Arenas, who benefited from Jordan's experience. While the Wizards did not reach the heights of championship contention, Jordan's return was a victory in its own right. It proved that his legacy, while anchored in his days with the Bulls, was far from over. The 2002-2003 season would be Jordan's final season in the NBA. Even though he was no longer the dominant force he had once been, Jordan still had moments of brilliance. He was averaging 20 points per game and was still capable of taking over games when necessary. The Wizards were a far cry from being a championship contender, but Jordan's leadership continued to elevate the team's play. Despite the physical toll his body had endured, his passion for the game never wavered. He was still Michael Jordan, and the competitive drive that had pushed him to 6 championships with the Bulls was still evident. By the time Jordan officially announced his retirement for the second and final time in April 2003, it was a bittersweet moment. His return to the Wizards had not resulted in another championship, but it had shown that his legacy could not be defined by titles alone. It was about the mark he left on the game, the way he changed the culture of basketball, and the influence he had on players, fans, and the world. As Jordan stepped away from the game for good, the basketball world, once again, was left to reflect on the immense impact he had had on the sport. Jordan's retirement marked the end of an era. The Chicago Bulls, with their 6 championships and unparalleled success during the 1990s, were no longer the dominant force in the league. The NBA itself had changed, with new stars emerging, and the game evolving in ways that Jordan could never have imagined. But despite this, Michael Jordan's place in history was firmly secured. He had redefined what it meant to be a basketball player, and his legacy would live on in the way the game was played and viewed for years to come. In the years that followed, Jordan's influence continued to be felt. His induction into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2009 was a moment that honored his unparalleled career and achievements. But the real measure of his legacy wasn't in the speeches or the plaques, it was in the impact he had on future generations of basketball players. From Kobe Bryant, who modeled his game after Jordan, to LeBron James, who acknowledged Jordan's greatness and sought to build his own legacy, the reverence for Jordan never waned. Jordan's competitive spirit, his ability to win under pressure, and his work ethic became the standard by which all NBA players were measured. He was the yardstick that every great player in the modern era sought to surpass. But it wasn't just his scoring ability or his championships that defined him. It was his mentality, the drive to always improve, to overcome obstacles, and to perform when the spotlight was brightest. This mentality became the blueprint for how future stars would approach their careers, and it's why Michael Jordan remains the greatest player to ever play the game. Off the court, Jordan continued to cement his place in history. As an owner of the Charlotte Hornets, he became one of the few former players to hold such a significant role in an NBA franchise. His influence as an owner was felt as he brought his expertise and competitive mindset to the business side of basketball. In addition, his philanthropic efforts, including his work with various charities, further solidified his legacy as someone who used his platform for the greater good. Even in retirement, Michael Jordan's name continued to be synonymous with greatness. The Air Jordan sneaker line remained one of the most popular and successful brands in sports history, and his influence on fashion and pop culture persisted. His competitive nature, his success, and his drive to be the best had transcended basketball itself. Looking back at Jordan's career, it's clear that his legacy isn't just about the 6 championships, the 5 MVPs, or the countless accolades. His true legacy is about the impact he had on the game, the culture, and the way we perceive greatness. Jordan showed us that greatness isn't just about talent, it's about heart, determination, and an unrelenting will to succeed. As we reflect on Michael Jordan's career, it's impossible to overstate the impact he had on the game of basketball and the world. His greatness wasn't just in his skill, it was in his mindset. Jordan didn't just play basketball, he defined it. And in doing so, he created a legacy that will live on for generations to come, not just in the record books, but in the hearts and minds of every person who ever watched him play. The greatest of all time. His legacy is truly eternal.